Good evening, everyone. Thanks for joining us tonight. We'll just wait the last minute or so for people to continue to join. I'm Miranda Nikolic and I'll be facilitating this evening. And we'll have some other team members joining us soon. Thanks for the great question, David. The recording will be made available on the webpage and emailed to participants with the email that they registered with. All right, we are going to start this evening's presentation. Thank you all for joining us. Tonight's presentation is regarding the Anketell-Thomas Road corridor planning that's currently underway in relation to Westport. As we move through this evening, we'll get a pretty good understanding of our presenters. In the first instance, just a couple more coming in. All right. Just as we start this evening, I wanted to acknowledge the people of the Noongar Nation as the traditional custodians of the land and waters on which this meeting takes place and on which Westport proposes to construct a new port and pay respect to their elders past, present and emerging. If you're joining us tonight, for any technology issues that you might experience, you can contact our Westport office on that telephone number. It's also been pasted, copied and pasted into the top of the chat on the right of most people's screen. I'd encourage you as we move through the evening to post any questions you might have in the question and answer chat, in the chat function rather. We will be running through those later this evening with some additional panel members. And after the event, should we not be able to answer any questions tonight, and all of the questions that are answered will be put up on our webpage and provided to participants with their email. Please note that our session tonight is recorded. That enables, and that recording will also be made available. A quick overview of tonight. First off, we will be running through a Westport General Program update, and that will be delivered by our Managing Director, Patrick Sears. Patrick will then hand over to our colleague at Main Roads, Paul Fury, who is Manager of Planning and Network Planning. And then we'll conclude the evening on our question and answer session. And the question and answer session we'll try to keep as long as possible and keep our presentations as short as possible. And now I'm going to hand over to Patrick.
Thanks very much, Miranda, and thanks everyone for joining us for this evening's session. Can I also just say, particularly to the landowners that have joined us this afternoon, this evening, that I appreciate obviously the announcement the other day and may have caused some concern and surprise, and I recognise that that would be a stressful situation for you. And I really hope today we can just go through some of the background information around Westport as to why this decision has been made. So I'm going to share my screen now and keep going. First of all, what is Westport? So Westport's vision is a world-class container terminal and trade network built with nature in mind that unlocks Western Australia's future economic prosperity. Effectively, outside of iron ore, most of our economy relies on the import of goods through our container terminal. At the moment, that's in Fremantle, and I'll get to a bit about why that's reaching the end of its life in the future. But most of what we have in our homes, most of what we buy actually comes into Australia and into Western Australia in containers. And most of what we'd like to see growing in terms of our exports will go out through containers as well in the future as well. So our economy is really dependent on it, and everything we buy and all the money we spend on goods and services is dependent on having an efficient supply chain of getting containers into Western Australia. What we really want to do is to make sure that Fremantle has served us so well for the last century, but what we need to ensure is that Western Australia can continue to grow and that we can have an efficient trade network bringing containers in as cheaply as possible, so all of the society and all of the economy can reap the rewards of that. The purpose of Westport at the moment is to be coming up with a business case and a more coherent plan about exactly how the port and the supply chain, the roads and rail behind it will need to operate for the next century. Why is Kwinana where we're focusing our work on? Kwinana is, Fremantle is, as I said, has been a fantastic terminal and continues to operate really efficiently for Western Australia. However, it's no secret that really the growth of population and more people living in and around Fremantle is slowly choking the transport links to get container trucks or container rail links into the terminal. And further to that, we have the situation where the container vessels around the world are slowly getting bigger and bigger. And that starts to create a situation where Fremantle, at some point in the near future, is going to start to become inefficient and start to drive up costs for everyone in terms of importing and exporting goods. So a piece of work was started to look through where is the alternative in the future that we can actually put a container terminal. Kwinana has been identified in 2020 by the Premier as the future terminal location. Kwinana was chosen effectively because it's a pre-existing industrial area which already supports busy bulk trade and other trades in Cockburn Sound and around the Kwinana industrial area. The way that we arrived at the decision that Kwinana was the best spot at the end of Anketell Road was actually a really extensive search that was carried out between 2017 and 2020. Through that process, we looked at 28 different options. I mean, this is a major decision for Western Australia, so it's absolutely imperative that we do the due diligence to make sure this is the right spot. 28 options we considered from Fremantle in different spots within Kwinana and Cockburn Sound and all the way down to Bunbury as well. There were even sort of outliers we'd thought about in terms of Geraldton and other places which were discounted early on. All of these 28 options were rigorously investigated in terms of what the pros and cons were, in terms of economically, in terms of the cost, in terms of the impact on the environment, and a range of other factors. It allowed us to come from 28 different options down to about 7 shortlisted options and do even further investigation as to those, about what the best space was on balance of all of these different values and concerns. And at the end of the time, there were 2 clear winners in the process. Given that Fremantle is becoming constrained, we need more capacity. And the recommended options in 2020 that resulted in this decision by government was that a terminal at the end of Anketell Road, a landback terminal in Kwinana, would be the best location. And we could move there at once or in 2 steps from Fremantle. That was 2 to 3 years of substantial work to compare those different options. And that's why we've arrived at Kwinana as being the best place. What we're confident about here is that, while there will be impacts and while they're obviously, we're not talking about a greenfield site. I mean, it would be wonderful in this world if we could go to places and no people or no environment was impacted by decisions by this. But on balance, this was the best option for the state of Western Australia moving forwards. So what we've now got to do, as I sort of said there, that was what we called stage 2 or strategic planning and optioning between 2017 and 2020 to come up with that recommendation. And what we're currently here to do is to do the business case and definition. So what we have now is where the new terminal needs to be on balance compared to all the different options. But what we need to figure out now is the next level of detail in terms of how the transition would be made, what that terminal and road and rail network looks like, and when that transition should actually occur, depending on the economic outcomes. But while we're doing that work, it's really important that we try and focus on great goals for Western Australia. This is, again, it's not just about building a bit of infrastructure. It's not just about building a terminal. It's about building trade infrastructure that has a long-term benefit to the state. So, of course, this is about improved trade outcomes for exporters and importers, and therefore the economy. But it's also about doing that in a way that it can grow for the next century. The worst thing we could do is to design a new terminal, new road and rail network, and then in 15 years' time, we have houses crowding around those transport links, and we end up in the same situation that we are now. So it's really important that this can scale with the state and ensure economic growth for all of us. We need to be careful about making sure we do this in a way that's fiscally responsible for the state budget. We really need this to be the most sustainable port in Australia. If this isn't developed for another, if the actual construction and the operation of the port doesn't occur for some years yet, the expectation of the community, obviously carbon neutrality and those things, is going to be crucial that this is built in a very careful way to be the most sustainable, but also because it's in Cockburn Sound, which is such an important water body for so many people, even though it does support our main industrial area. It needs to be developed in a way that benefits the local community in terms of jobs, but also in terms of social outcomes and recreational outcomes, and of course, Indigenous peoples in this neck of the woods too. And lastly, and really importantly, it needs to be safe, and not just safe on the terminal in terms of the workers that are actually operating the terminal itself, but obviously when we see an increasing number of trucks and an increasing number of rail to deal with what's an ever-growing trade task for the next century, we need to make sure those trucks and those trains can operate with and around and outside of the same networks that mums and dads and you and I are driving our cars around as well, so it can actually operate safely. A new freight corridor is a crucial component of any port and terminal. In fact, it's one of the biggest constraints. It's the reason why around the world we continue to see ports moving out of the middle of congested cities. It's sometimes the port has capacity, but it's actually the trucks and the trains cannot get in and out efficiently, get stuck in congestion, and that drives increased cost for everyone. So it's really important that when we're going through this process, that what we set up is new freight corridors for road and rail into the terminal, and new freight corridors that can, as I said before, grow for the next century as there's more and more trucks on the road to service the terminal. But not just that, but there's more trucks on the road next to, again, more cars and other vehicles on those roads as southern suburbs grow in Western Australia. So we need an efficient, cost-effective supply chain. We need it to be able to grow for the next 100 years. We need to think about this in a way as it creates development opportunities around it as well. So it's not just, again, about the terminal, but broader impacts. And we have high quality and safe networks for container trade going forwards. What we've tried to do in this process is to share the design as early as possible. Now, in a lot of infrastructure projects, what happens is you come up with these first concepts, and then you go and do further design, and you don't really go out to the public and the market with something until you've got a much greater idea. But what we've seen around Australia recently is that there's been a little bit, some of that's gone too far, and what's happening is designs are being delivered to the community much later than we think is fair. It's not fair that people will now go and make a lot of decisions around their lives and their land and what they want to do with it, not knowing what's actually coming down the pipeline. So it's really important for us to actually get information out as soon as we possibly can to say, this is what we think might be there, even though we've got some more design work to do. I know this will have been a surprise for some people, and that's completely understandable. The Outer Harbour, in a way, has been in the long-term plans for Perth since 1950, since the Gordon-Stephenson plan. There was an attempt to get the Outer Harbour set up in about the year 2000, another one in about 2010. And Anketell Road has been identified as a major freight link since 2010, updated in 2015, and then obviously announced in 2020 by the Premier when he said it was going to be a free-flowing major freight link connecting Tonkin Highway with the new terminal. So yeah, again, sometimes it's difficult to sort of see all those long-term and big strategic plans, but this has been sort of something that's been in the making for some time. And what we really wanted to do is to get the design out, get the footprint out to people that are affected as soon as possible, so we can start to talk to you about it while we finalise the design, rather than wait for the last moment and then drop it out there. The way we've approached as I said, getting the information out there allows us to work with you and others in this space about sort of your concerns and your issues while we refine the design. Now, the scale of the road that's been identified at the moment is very large. Again, it needs to be able to be big enough to service Western Australia and Perth and the Peel region in 2100, not just 2023. So it is substantial. But what we wanted to get this out there is to share it with you and then to be able to put planning control areas in places where we need to. Now, planning control areas are those planning tools where we put over an area where the future road might need to be. And what that means is that it just prevents, it prevents people from going ahead and trying to develop land that is actually ultimately going to be required for a road, because that ends up with a lot of cost for the taxpayer and everyone, but also people invest in a lot of development and then have to roll it back, and that can obviously cause a lot of issues for themselves as well. The final land requirements for this corridor are not confirmed. As I said, this is a concept design at this stage. However, I would just caution that statement a little bit in the fact that it is, no matter what design we come up with, is going to have to be a 4-lane major road. And so between the big intersections that you'll see, which may be bigger or smaller, or may start a little bit smaller and then grow bigger over the decades, the 4-lane sections are going to have to be 4 lanes, and that's just simply to allow the amount of trucks to go along this that is required, but also to allow it to be doing safely with the increasing number of cars that you and I and other people are going to be driving along this road going forwards. So the planning control areas are out there while we finalise the land, and allows us to speak and engage with property owners and other people that are interested in this space. The next step for this development is, as I said, so the announcement was made a couple of weeks ago in terms of the early road concept design that was shared with the community of landowners. This wasn't released previous to that announcement at all. This is, as I said, we worked really quickly to try and get something done as soon as possible and get it out to the community rather than hang on to it. And so we've got that out as soon as we possibly can. After consultation through this process, that Miranda, I know, is speaking to many of you and others, after we've had the opportunity to talk to you about this, the road design and what the implications of that are and what the opportunities for you are, in the middle of 2022, that's when we expect the planning control areas to be implemented, and they will that's when we'll actually see decisions not to be able to change development in those locations. Between the mid-2022 and end of 23 is actually the whole time that we'll be designing, to refining the design. And this is going to follow, obviously, community engagement, but also the substantial work that's yet to be done around how many trucks and how big does the road actually need to be, depending on how many containers are going to be travelling on road, how many are going to be travelling on rail, and how big the port needs to be. It's also going to be heavily influenced by environmental and cultural studies, which haven't been undertaken at this point. We have some initial environmental studies which allowed us to position the road, but there'll be more detailed work done, obviously, as the design progresses, and obviously the cultural studies as well. We have a cultural advisory group of elders and leaders from the area that were elected by Aboriginal people in this area, and they've been very clear with us about the need to do proper cultural studies along the corridor to identify any areas we might need to avoid or areas that we need to accommodate. So really, in late 2023, the final concept design, or the final design of Anketell Road, is expected to be refined. As I said, it is likely that the trunk mains where there's 4 lanes and that's it, that's very difficult to change. We can't make those more narrower because you have to have them certainly a certain width for safety. But really, what we'll be focusing on is the large intersection components of the development. What I'm going to do now, I'm going to ask Simone to actually run a visualization of the road, and then after that, Paul Ferrari from Main Roads, who's been the lead on the design and modelling of this road, is going to take you through the design in somewhat detail, and then we'll come back to questions. Thanks, Simone.
Just as we take the time to go through the video here, if you can just remember on the chat function, if you've got any questions that you would like answered during the question and answer session, if you could please pop those in the chat. That's our means of gathering those questions and then being able to direct them to the appropriate panel members to be able to answer. We'll also post the link of the video in the chat so that you've got that for reference. Okay, and as that wraps up, we're going to get Paul to share his screen now and take us through the concept design. Thank you so much, Paul.
Thank you, Miranda. Okay, I'll share my screen now. Can you see that? Is that visible?
Yes, that's visible here. Thanks.
Okay, thanks. So I'll be showing an engineering drawing of the design that we prepared for the Anketell Road freight route, extending from Tonkin Highway in the east through to Clementi Road west of Kwinana Freeway. There are two plans that show the design. So this is the first plan, extending from Tonkin Highway over Cargottage Road, through Nicholson Road and then Thomas Road. And then the second plan will continue from west of Nicholson Road through to the freeway and then through to Clementi Road. So those are the two plans that I'll be showing and going through in detail. But before I go through the plans, I want to briefly just talk about the standard and function of the route. As Patrick has said, this freight route will serve the future container port for a long time, probably for the next 50 to 100 years. So the design really needs to provide an efficient and reliable and safe road for both port container trucks as well as the general traffic. We did some modelling, and considering the traffic volumes that the road will carry in future, an expressway standard road will be required. So this will require grade separation at the major crossroads, such as Cargottage and Nicholson, and then also converting the remaining side roads into left-in, left-out configuration. I'll show that in a bit more detail later on. And then this will allow free flow operation for all port traffic and also for general traffic along the route. We've designed the freight route for a 90 km/h posted speed from Tonkin Highway to Lion Road, which is east of Kwinana Freeway. That then reduces to a posted speed of 70 km/h between Lion Road and Clementi Road. That's quite a challenging section of the design, which I'll show you. And then we've increased the design speed to 90 km/h again, further west of Clementi Road into the port. Just to note that this freight route will carry it'll carry RAV7 vehicles. So those are 36.5 meter road trains, pretty large vehicles. Those road trains can each carry two 40-foot containers, or they can carry four 20-foot containers. So that will also improve efficiency for the port. What we've also had to do in the design is to remove all direct property access, because we can't have vehicles turning into properties from the freight route, because that will be dangerous and it will also affect the efficiency. The Department of Transport has prepared a cycle plan for the broader Perth area, and their cycle plan shows a secondary cycle route along this corridor from Tonkin Highway right through to the coast. So our design has provided a principal shared path to align with that plan, which I'll show you as well. And so we're also catering for cyclists along this route, not only freight. And then finally, the existing high-wide load route, which carries the large 10 meter by 12 meter vehicles, 10 meter height by 12 meter width, those vehicles currently travel along Thomas Road, and they will continue to do so in the future, and then they will join this freight route at this location here at Nicholson Road, and then travel through to Tonkin Highway. So let me just zoom in quickly so that I can show this in more detail. So I just want to explain the line colors quickly. So the yellow lines show the future carriageways, so the westbound carriageway and the eastbound carriageway. And these yellow lines show earthworks, so full slopes or cut slopes. These yellow lines show future drainage basins that we proposed. The green denotes a drainage channel, a water corp drainage channel. You may see a blue line here. So the blue line shows the central median between the two carriageways. The pink lines here show the future planned principal shared path, which is located on the southern side of the road. And then the red lines show the proposed reservation boundary for this freight route in future. So first I can just show, this is the future planned Tonkin and Thomas Road grade separation. I understand this has been funded by the federal government, and we're just waiting for the state government to co-fund it, but it should be constructed in the near future. And this provides free flow movements from Tonkin Highway, from the north and the south, into the Thomas Anketell freight route. So it'll be very, very high standard grade separation that provides free flow into this freight route from all directions. So moving to, I beg your pardon, moving to the west. So on this section between Tonkin Highway and Coggottage Road, the road will be widened to the south, and that is to avoid impacting this very important water corporation drain. It's called the Bariga Main Drain, and that catches all the sheet flow off these properties and takes it further south. So we don't want to impact that drain. So the road has been widened, or the road will be widened to the south. And again, this is the principal shared path that runs on the southern side of the road. And as I said, we've done drainage assessment, a very high level drainage assessment. And these areas are future drainage basins to carry the runoff from the road. So the first grade separation that we have west of Tonkin Highway is at Coggottage Road, which is over here. So Coggottage Road would remain at ground level. So that's at ground level. And then the freight route, the 4-lane divided freight route, will pass over Coggottage Road. So free flow operation. These we call quarter loops. So we have a quarter loop in this quadrant and a quarter loop in this quadrant. So this quarter loop will take traffic that's traveling westbound off the freight route onto Coggottage and also onto the freight route from Coggottage. And this quarter loop will take traffic that's traveling eastbound along to, the freight route off onto Coggottage Road and also onto Coggottage Road. So this is the first grade separation. We considered a number of configurations. So you can have a grade separated roundabout or a grade separated diamond interchange, but this was the most efficient interchange for the volumes that we will experience on Coggottage Road in future and for the area. So that's the first grade separation. Let's move further west, I beg your pardon. So along this section, the road will be widened to the south in future. So the existing road will be the eastbound carriageway, and a new westbound carriageway will be constructed to the south with a PSP further south. And then you may see this red line is a proposed reservation boundary for the freight route. As I said, we've removed all direct property access from the road. So this is Rice Road. Rice Road will be closed, and then a new service road will be constructed at this location here to Coggottage to give access to these properties here. Moving further west. So this is Piers Drive. Piers Drive will be converted to left in, left out. And a left-in, left-out configuration will allow all traffic, general traffic and the port traffic to move free flow on the route without stopping. To the south here, we have Peverett Lane that will also be converted to left-in, left-out. And then you'll see this road constructed to the north of the freight route. That's a service road that will provide property access for all these properties along the corridor, so that we don't have any direct property access along the freight route. Moving further west. Now this was quite a complex location because we've got Nicholson Road to the north and Nicholson Road to the south. We obviously have Thomas Road to the east, Anketell Road to the west, and then Thomas Road to the south here. So the best way of dealing with this, because we want to provide free flow movement for freight traffic and for general traffic through these intersections. So what we've provided here is 2 grade separated roundabouts. So this is a roundabout, a very large roundabout. I think it has a diameter of around about 70 meters at grade, and that's a roundabout at grade as well. And the freight route runs free flow over these 2 roundabouts. And then the roundabouts with these little service roads on either side provide for all movement. So you can come along the freight route, take the off ramp, go through the roundabout, pass under the freight route, and then travel to the north, and so forth. All movements are allowed for at this grade separation, but it is quite complex. Again, these round areas here, these are future drainage basins to catch all the flow, all the runoff from this future grade separation. And you can see here's our principal shared path running on the southern side of the road. And then Thomas Road in future will be upgraded to 4-lane divided standard, and that continues to the south here. Just moving further to the west. Okay, that's the end of this plan. So more drainage basins here. And for this section and further west, the road's being aligned to the south, and that's to avoid impacting an important bush forever site that's located to the north of the road here. So I'll move on to the next plan now. So this is just continues from the previous plan. Maybe make it a bit smaller. There we go. Okay. So as I said, this road section has been aligned to the south, and that is to avoid impacting this important bush forever site along here. So moving further west, and I think I'll just zoom out a bit like that. I think that covers this area. So there are a number of properties that are isolated to the north of existing Anketell Road. These properties over here. And as I said, we really need to maximize efficiency for this route. And so what we've done, we can't provide direct property access for these properties. And so what we've done, we've aligned the future freight route to the north in this location through these properties. And we've done that so that we can use existing Anketell Road, which runs along here. We can use existing Anketell Road to provide access to all of these properties on the southern side of the road. So we retain existing Anketell Road. In fact, that will also be used as the principal shared path. So the principal shared path will join into existing Anketell Road, and cyclists will be able to drive along that road. Obviously, that's a 50k an hour road, but that will provide access to all of these properties. And then this is Piers Drive, which will be converted to left-in, left-out to give access to the freight corridor. So the freight corridor is free flow to the north here. Just moving further to the west. Okay, so this was a really complex or challenging section for us. There are a number of structure plans through this area. There's the 1D structure plan to the north and Anketell to the south. Those structure plans have provided a certain level of access off Anketell Road, and so we need to provide that same level of access in this design that we've done. But at the same time, we need to provide free flow movement for freight traffic. And so what we've done here, this is a 4-lane divided cross section here, but at this location we take 2 lanes into the median. So there are 2 lanes running centrally from this location over Line Road, under Treeby Road, and then rising to a 3rd level above Kwinana Freeway. And that what that allows us to do is it allows the freight traffic to continue to move in a free flow operation through this area. But we also have to provide 2 surface roads, 1 2-lane surface road on the southern side and 1 2-lane surface road on the northern side to provide access from the freight route to this area. So if you're traveling along the freight route at this location and you want to turn off at Line Road, you would come along here. You would take the surface road, come to a set of signals, and then turn right under the central freight route. If you wanted to travel to Treeby Road, you would come off here. You would travel along the surface road, and then you would turn right and pass over the freight route. So this is fairly complex, and unfortunately, as a result, the footprint is fairly large through this area. But as I said, we had to provide access as per the structure plans, which we've done, but we also need to continue to provide a free flow freight route for all the container trucks and other freight traffic. So these will be 2 freight only lanes for container trucks from the future port, but also for other heavy vehicles. So moving further to the west. So in order to achieve that, we have to provide a 3-level grade separation at this location. So we have Kwinana Freeway and the rail at the lower level. Then we have Anketell Road, westbound, which will use the existing bridge, and eastbound, which will use a new bridge, which will be constructed to the north at the next level, at the existing Anketell Road level. And then we'll have the freight route, which is 1 lane per direction, running at a 3rd level over here, so that will allow vehicles coming off Kwinana Freeway and, for example, turning right on Anketell Road. So they'd only be able to do that if this were at a 3rd level, because they will turn right underneath this freight route. So maybe I can just pan down here. There's a profile that shows this as well, and when you ask questions, I can show this as well. But that's existing Kwinana Freeway and the rail at that level. This is existing Anketell Road at that level, and then the freight route passes under Treeby Road and then climbs and passes over Kwinana Freeway at a 3rd level, and then it continues. It passes over Mandogalup Road and then back down to ground level at this location. So that arrangement continues with the freight route in the central median, 2 2-lane surface roads, 1 westbound and 1 eastbound through the Mandogalup intersection. So this is also grade separated, providing all movements into Mandogalup, but allowing the freight traffic from the port and all other heavy vehicles to proceed free flow through this area, and then rejoining the 4-lane divided freight route at this location. What we haven't shown here, unfortunately, I'm sorry, this is the principal shared path, but that continues through here. So we'll have shared paths on both sides because this is an urban area. We'll have shared paths on both sides, continuing on the northern side through this area. There is very, very slight impact to the spectacles. In fact, there was impact because there's an existing planning control area over this area, and so there would have been impact anyway. And we just working on the design to try to minimize that impact as much as possible. So as Patrick has said, this is really, it's a very preliminary design. And so the purpose of this session is just to inform you exactly what this design looks like. And we welcome all your comment. So I'll hand over to Miranda now, and then she'll start the Q&A session. We welcome all your comment, and then we'll try to incorporate your comment to the best of our ability where possible into the design in future. So Miranda, maybe I can hand
Thanks,
it over
Paul.
to you.
I'm going to ask you to keep sharing your screen for the moment. Just if we get queries
Okay,
in relation to the design, we've got a couple that have come up.
I'll just zoom this out, and then I can zoom into the appropriate area.
No
Okay,
worries.
there we go.
While we're moving through that, thank you, Patrick and Paul. Just to recap, anyone with questions, if you can pop them in the chat. There are a couple of people with their hands raised, and I'm not sure whether that's because you've got a question or if you've got a technical difficulty. If we've got a technical difficulty, if you can ring our number that was posted at the top of the chat. And if it's a question, if you could pop that into the chat, that would be great. Joining us also, there'll be a couple of other members joining our panel this evening as we move through the questions. Thank you for posting the questions already. There's a few appearing, so I'm going to start directing those to where they need to go. What is the expected timeline to release the detail of the final stretch of the port entry? And I think that's a question for you, Patrick, please.
Thanks, Miranda. Yeah, so we probably won't see the release of the final stretch until late 2023. The reason for that is that that's really tied heavily into the design of the terminal itself and some of the decision making around how much we expect to be on road and rail, but also a fair bit of work that's going on right now around the planning for the Western Trade Coast that some of our colleagues in government have started as well. So the other thing for that is that, you know, I'm in contact with some of the landowners and the property owners in the industrial estate. There aren't too many homeowners, if you like, in that stretch. So we're really sort of trying to focus on this and getting out to the community that's directly affected, whereas some of that other work can take due course. So I'd say, yeah, mid to late 23s.
Great. Thanks so much, Patrick. There are a couple of other questions here, and I'd also like to welcome our colleague from the Department of Land Planning and Heritage, Jason, who's joined our panel with us. Paul, this one is reaching out to you. Will the Lion, Treeby, Mandogalup Road intersections be signalised or roundabouts, please?
Yes, so let me just zoom in there quickly. So what we've tried to do, we've really tried to limit the footprint in this location. You can see it's very tight. As I said, we've got the central freight route, and then we've got these two-lane surface roads. So if these were roundabouts, we'd require more land. We haven't really gone into that level of detail yet, but we expect that these will be signal controlled intersections at this location.
Great, thanks, Paul. Just moving through, will there be any noise mitigation works to maintain resident amenity at the Lion Road intersection? Paul,
yes,
please.
So I can answer that. Yes, so we've done a fair amount of environmental assessment along the route. We've done biological surveys. We've done some waterway surveys. We will be doing a noise assessment. And that will probably happen later this year and early next year. And the noise we need to also we need to complete our traffic modelling, because we need to understand what the future volumes would be, and then we will do a detailed noise assessment and work out exactly where noise walls would be required. But I would suspect that they would be required here through this urban area.
Great, thank you, Paul. And moving into, can you please provide more detail on access to and from Scoville and Chewett roads, Paul?
Yeah, sure can. Okay, just here we go. So as I mentioned, along this section, existing Anketell Road will be used as a service road to provide access to these properties along here. Whereas the freight route will be aligned to the north. So if we don't have grade separation, we have converted the intersections to left in, left out configuration. And that is just to maximize efficiency so that we don't have to stop vehicles. So Tuart Road will be converted to left in, left out. So the question is, you know, how does the right out happen? Well, look, Tuart Road is connected to the south to Thomas Road, and unfortunately, that would be the route. So if you wanted to do a right out here, you would need to go down Tuart Road to Thomas Road and then back to these grade separated roundabouts here, and then you'll be able to move in any direction. So that's the Tuart Road connectivity. Scoville Crescent comes off existing Anketell Road here, and so it will be part of the service road. So these intersections will remain as is, but they'll be part of the service road. So if you're living in this over here, and you want to get out of the area, and if you want to go westbound, you can then turn right onto Scoville Crescent, drive down existing Anketell Road, which will be a service road, and then turn left into the freight route. Of course, if you want to turn right, you'll need to get to Tuart Drive and then drive down to Thomas Road, turn left into Thomas, and then proceed on to the roundabouts. I think that answers the question, hopefully.
Yes, thanks, Paul. I think that's great. And another one for you, Paul. No access road is shown for the properties north of Anketell Road. Will these properties cease to exist, or will access roads be developed to De Hare Road near Tuart?
The current thinking is that that these properties, we can't service these properties. So the current alignment runs through the front of these properties. The only way it would make sense to provide a service road to the north if you retain these properties. The only way we could retain these properties is by aligning the freight route to the south through here and then impacting these properties. And then one could investigate an access to the north, but the current planning is that we align the freight route over these properties and then acquire them. That's the current planning.
Great, thank you. There's a question here: has the original Mandogalup town site, which is has heritage value, been considered? I'm not sure if that's one for you, Paul, and around the road design.
Okay,
or a planning.
It's more a planning. It's more a look. So I can just zoom in here. So that's what we have for the design at the moment, and of course there is impact. Now I'm not sure what the reference is, whether it's reference to this area over here. So obviously we're not changing anything over here. We will be tying into Mandogalup Road at this location right here. But I don't know whether Matt wants to add something to that.
Matt, if you're available to add anything there, or if the author, if that hasn't answered your question, if you could jot an additional note in the chat to indicate whether that had answered your question. And as we'll keep moving and come back to that if there's an outstanding area there. Have you considered RAV7 access to Armstrong Road from Anketell Road further to the west, Paul?
Okay, so as Patrick said, that design will only be completed next year. But we are looking at an early concept for the section. So we're looking at an early concept for the section west of Clemente Road, which is west of this location, through to Rockingham Road. We're currently busy with that, but that'll only be refined once we have more information on the port design and the mode of operation at the port, and we understand what traffic demand we need to design for. This road, as I said, will be designed to RAV7 standard from Tonkin Highway through to Rockingham Road. Abercrombie Road will also be designed to RAV7 standard because that services the whole of latitude 32 to the north. I believe that Armstrong Road is currently a RAV4 route. So, we'd have to consider whether that needs to be upgraded to RAV7. At the moment, it's RAV4, and so that's probably what it will remain as, unless there's a compelling reason to design it for RAV7.
Thanks, Paul. And I think this is another one for you. I know we've touched on the Line Road intersection location, but there's a query here as to how noise will be mitigated overall.
Through this area here, through the urban area, I assume. Look, that is something. So we have done some high-level transport modelling using our main roads regional operations model, and that's a strategic demand model that covers the whole metropolitan area. So we have a reasonable idea of traffic volumes along the route, but we have just started more detailed mesoscopic and microsimulation modelling, which will give us more detail on the traffic volumes. That work will be complete later on this year, and then that will inform any noise assessments that will be done. So the noise assessments will then identify what noise mitigation will be required for this section through this urban area.
Thank you. Before you go away, I think there's another. Will this road upgrade be able to handle perceived traffic volumes, both freight to Westport as well as car traffic for the next 30 or more years?
Oh, definitely. So, Thomas Road, east of Nicholson, probably carries around 20,000 vehicles a day. Anketell Road to the west, the volumes drop off significantly, and then volumes pick up west of the freeway again, I think to around 15,000 vehicles a day. So the very high level modelling that we've done looks out to 2040 and 2050, and it suggests that this road will carry between 30,000 and 50,000 vehicles a day. And included in that traffic volume would be all the container trucks, which would then go to Tonkin Highway. So this style of road, which is an expressway standard road with grade separation at the major local road intersections and left in, left out at the minor intersections, will easily be able to carry those volumes into the future. Yes, and that's why this standard of road was selected.
Great, thanks, Paul. Patrick, over to you. Our business is a query around our business possibly going to be affected due to the final stretch of the port entry. When is Westport considering contacting affected businesses in this area?
Thanks, Shatan. Apologies if I got the name wrong. Look, we've reached out to most of the businesses where we expect, or the landlords of where we expect approximately that last stretch to be going, and having a conversation with them. So if we've missed you and yourself, if I could get you to just contact Miranda after this session, then we'll reach out to you and be in touch as soon as possible. But as I said, the final design at that end is a bit of work to do before we get too far down that track.
Great, thank you, Patrick, and thanks for the great question. This is a bushfire prone area. Left in and left turn out lanes limit options for people fleeing a potential bushfire. How will this be mitigated, please, Paul?
Yeah, so look, that is correct, but we believe that there's so at this location, so I think if there's an emergency, you'd have traffic management on site, and you'd be able to travel in the wrong direction on the road. So even though it's left in, left out, so let's just look here. So here we have a left in, left out. So left in, left out. But I think that if there's a fire emergency, you'd have traffic management on site and emergency services, and you'd be able to do the right out and drive through to the through to the Thomas Road access.
Thanks very much.
That makes sense.
Just a question on whether the concept plan PDFs shown here can be emailed. The format of them at the moment is fairly difficult to email depending on mailbox sizes and legibility, but we're working on having some plans available to share in a more shareable format. So thanks again. What about the noise mitigation between Cargodditch Road and Nicholson Roads for the special rural properties on the north side of the road, Paul? How will that be considered?
So these properties over here, probably. Look, I think it's probably the same answer that that I had previously, that we are doing more detailed transport modelling, and that modelling will then feed into noise modelling, which we want to have done probably by the end of this year or early next year, and then that will indicate what would be required in terms of noise protection along this area here. Look, it will probably be noise walls or noise bunds.
Yes. Yep. Thanks, Paul, for clarifying that. And also around the consideration of alternate alignments, Paul, has Thomas Road west of Kwinana Freeway to Rockingham been considered, and also Thomas Road east of the freeway directly through to Nicholson Road, rather than altering Anketell Road as such? There are already 4 lanes west of the freeway, so with a few intersection modifications that would fit the criteria. Running east of the freeway to Thomas Road, Nicholson Road also would require less alteration, with 3 or 4 quieter intersections than those along Anketell Road. And there's just a comment that I understand the western connection to the port may be the reason for this. However, the land west of Motorplex could be utilised for this connection.
Sure. So I think, as Patrick said, quite a lot of work was done in phase 2 to select the access corridor, and that work identified Anketell Road. Look, there's no doubt that Thomas Road will remain a really important regional road, but our view is that it will be, and it runs past Kwinana, so it carries quite a lot of light vehicle traffic, which accesses Kwinana to the south. And we really don't want to mix these large container trucks, which would potentially be RAV7 vehicles, with commuter traffic. So that's one of the reasons why Anketell Road was selected. The second reason is, quite correctly so, is that Anketell Road provides a direct link into the port location. So it would prevent, if we had selected Thomas Road, trucks would have to have dogleg to the south to proceed north, because most of the container trucks, the origins and destinations are to the north, in the strategic industrial areas.
Great. There's an additional one here just in relation to the protection of flora and fauna and how that's occurring at the Jandakot Regional Park. Paul, please.
Okay, I wonder whether Matt wants to answer that.
Matt's not online at the moment. We might have to take that, or Patrick.
Yeah, look. I'll just Matt isn't here, but I'll just answer that. So I think one of the things that Main Roads and Paul have done here is actually to try to find a really good balance for the corridor in terms of what's been developed. So yes, there are some impacts, unfortunately, on flora and fauna, but that has been balanced with trying to avoid the impact on many properties and people. So there is a bit of a balance. Obviously, the surveys that Paul was referring to that have been done, and more surveys will be done to make sure that we manage properly the fringe effects of the new corridor. And obviously, there's a lot of work going on in the background. I mean, if we are going to have the most sustainable port in Australia, then that also includes the logistics links. And so there's a lot of work going on how we can enhance vegetation in this area, or buy additional offsets to reconnect large blocks of land or otherwise, to accommodate and deal with any impacts that we do have. So yeah, I think there's a really balanced solution that's been arrived at between important environments and also people's properties. But there's still work to go in that space, as we've said.
Yes, and obviously the drainage design would also be environmentally sensitive, with bioretention, etc., to make sure that spills don't get out of the road reserve.
Great, thank you, gents. If we do have some additional information that if you still would like some more information around that environmental stuff, we would need to take those on notice though tonight and respond later. Paul, can you please explain the alternative RAV7 route to latitude 32 rather than Armstrong Road? Our business is forecasting over 0.5 million tonnes of bulk freight in and out per year.
Right. So this will be a RAV7 route from Tonkin through to the port, through to Rockingham Road. Our view was that Abercrombie would be a RAV7 route because it serves the whole of latitude 32. Armstrong Road is currently a RAV4 route. So I suppose if there's a compelling reason to upgrade that to RAV7, then that is something that our heavy vehicle access management section would be able to look at. And then I would say, to modify the design to allow for RAV7 vehicles at the Anketell-Armstrong intersection would not be too difficult. We'd be able to do that.
I might just jump in there, Greg. Paul, one of the challenges that Paul's team actually has in this space is that obviously we can't just design a perfect road that flies in and hits in a container port and ignore everything else that's going on around. So part of the work the government's doing around the Western Trade Coast and Lat 32 is sort of trying to understand what that future growth is. So when we do that final stretch of design, it's actually done not just for the terminal, but to enhance and improve efficiency for transport and other things in that neck of the woods entirely. So that's why it does get very complicated towards the terminal, not just the terminal design, but everything else which is going on in that space, and obviously the desire to make sure that we end up with better transport links for everybody at the end of this, rather than and not just the containers.
Sure.
Right. Sorry, Paul, did you have something to add there?
No, that's look. Our heavy vehicle access section deals with RAV access, and if there's strong justification to make Armstrong a RAV7 route, is currently RAV4, then that would be considered.
We're right on time, so we've got two more questions that I'll direct to, I think they're both for you, Paul, and then we'll do a quick recap on what the final, the comment period and how to get in touch. Paul, will Chewett Road be upgraded to cope with the increased traffic volume, please?
Look, I don't think that Chewett Road would carry much higher volumes. You would get sure, you would get vehicles, you would get the right turning traffic. So all the left turning and the left turning traffic and the left turning traffic would remain the same. There would be a slight increase for vehicles that want to turn right out here, but I wouldn't think that would justify upgrading the road to a better standard. Hello?
Oh, sorry, Paul. That was me. It didn't unmute. When would the construction of the roads start, and when will they be complete, please?
All right. Do you want to answer that one, Patrick?
Yeah, sure.
I can answer.
Look, I think that, again, part of the work we're doing in Westport at the moment in the business case is to figure out the when. So part of that is obviously figuring out when the best time to transition containers down to Kwinana is, and therefore obviously that triggers a raft of different development, both obviously the container terminal itself plus the road and rail links all having to be in place for that moment. However, we still have some time to go in that. That's the purpose of the piece of work that we're doing. So while Paul's done a great job here, and I know this looks very, very finished in terms of an engineering diagram. You know, he assures me that this is very conceptual up front. They've had to do this quite quickly. So in terms of the actual timeline for when this is actually going to be built, it won't be built for at least a couple of years, but we just don't know at this stage, and that's the work that we're going to be doing over the next year. What we'd like to do, though, is just, I guess, is make sure everyone understands that ultimately something like this will be required, and so then work together, particularly with the landowners in that area, on an ongoing basis after this, not just around the design of this road, but actually around the whole project and how that's going to roll out, so everyone is as forewarned as they possibly can be. But it's not like we're going to be kicking this off in about 6 months' time at all. It's not. That's exactly the purpose. We're coming out as early as possible, so everyone has enough time to sort of work with us on it.
Great, thank you, panel members. And just, I know there are a couple of other questions still running on the side there. We're just running short on time now, but we will respond to those and include them in the answers that are published. Thank you very much, everyone, for your queries. I'm just going to share my screen again, which just recaps what our contact details are and where you can go to find out more information. If you just bear with me, please. So in terms of comment, the concept design is out until the 21st of June. We have a survey active on MySay Transport. The links to that survey are available on our website, which is westport.wa.gov.au. Also available are, is a subscription service, an email subscription service that you can register for updates, and our up and coming information sessions. We're looking for local community opportunities to engage in the during this period. So we'll be sending out updates via that channel. In terms of property owner impacts, if you have received a letter and not yet spoken to me, I really welcome the opportunity to talk about your particular set of circumstances and property requirements, and set up a meeting. I think actually concludes this evening, and I wanted to thank everybody for participating in our session, and thank you very much to our panel members for their great contributions, and for the great to the great team members behind the scenes getting your questions up and running. If you have any other questions, don't hesitate to email or contact the general inquiries email and phone number available as well.